Mystery encounters with strange aquatic humanoids. The world can be a very strange place, and there have always been tales and reports of encounters with strange humanoids. There is one corner of this weirdness that seems to get comparatively little coverage, and that is that of bizarre encounters with odd aquatic organisms by military personnel. These are trained military men who have come across weird things beneath the waves for which their training has not prepared them. We will look at a variety of such cases of seemingly aquatic humanoids that have perplexed military personnel. According to one report from researcher Linda Moulton Howe, in 1968, a former U.S. Army Specialist 4, a military policeman stationed at the Presidio in San Francisco, California, as well as Fort Baker in Marin County, California, had an odd encounter with some sort of aquatic humanoid. The witness calls himself David, and says that at the time of his weird encounter he had been on a patrol of Fort Baker at approximately 1 a.m. in the morning, not far from the main installation and only about 20 feet from the water's edge of San Francisco Bay. He had been with a partner, and at some point during their lonely patrol they noticed fleeting movement off in the dark and slowed the vehicle to see what it was, thinking it must be a trespasser. In a way they were right, but this was no human intruder. The witness says, "When I applied the brakes, it lit that thing up. And it had a humanoid form. The only way I can describe it is if you saw the movie, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. It was very, very close to that. Very close. The head was a little bit smaller, but the overall form of it was very close to that creature. And it came out of the water and stood on the road. And when I put the brakes on, I could see it clearly. And my partner turned around, and he saw it. It was a humanoid form, but from what I could make out of the detail of it, it looked like it wasn't flesh. I could look at it, it kind of looked like, well, it looked like some kind of lizard skin or something like that. That's what it looked like. But it was a little smoother than that. The color of it was kind of a greenish brown, a dark greenish brown. And it had broad shoulders, so it looked very healthy. It looked very strong and healthy because it was tall. I would guess that it was about 9 feet. It's kind of hard to judge, but definitely not under 7 feet. I'd say it was about 9 feet tall. And as we looked at it, the creature stood there for maybe 5 seconds or at the most 10 seconds, and then it took off. I could see it just run, but it ran not back into the water, but towards the cliff that was there. There was a sheer cliff there that it ran against and disappeared. We were both a little shaken, to be honest with you. So my partner and I both saw this thing, and we saw it run into the cliff. There's nothing but a cliff there. I can't imagine anybody being able to climb that cliff. It was just like a wall. Another account from the same time period that also involves military personnel on the beach was related by researcher Scott Corrales at the site Inexplicata and originates from a report given by a military man stationed at the Caribbean island of Antigua in 1969. On this evening, he and a few friends had gone down to Mamora Bay to do some night fishing. As the sun went down, they noticed a group of people having a bonfire down the beach, and they didn't think much of this at the time, but then the people around the fire were reported to have been engaged in some sort of ritual, forming an inexplicable circle, and even seemingly sacrificing chickens. So far, so strange, but it would get even weirder still when something began to stir out among the moon-frosted waves, and the witness says, "We suddenly saw someone come out of the water. We were speechless. It wasn't a skin diver. It was a person, but a lot taller. Standing over 6 feet tall, he walked slowly and surely toward the men in the circle." The beast in question was described as humanoid in general shape, but with an angular, tapered head, webbed hands and feet, and a row of bony protrusions going down its scaly back. As it approached the group doing the ritual, one of them walked right up to it holding a bowl into which the chicken's blood had been emptied, and the creature took it and began to drink from it. When it had finished the contents of the bowl, it silently turned around and headed back towards the water, where it dove in and disappeared into the darkness. The men were thoroughly freaked out by all of this by this point and vacated the area with great haste. What in the world was going on here? Rituals on the beach, chicken sacrifices, and aquatic humanoids. What gives? Another very strange account of an encounter with underwater humanoids supposedly happened at Russia's Lake Baikal in 1982. Navy divers in the lake on a training exercise reported coming across unknown human-like organisms swimming about at a depth of around 164 feet. The huge humanoids were described as being around 10 feet tall and wearing some sort of skin-tight silver suits and round helmets on their heads. When the divers tried to pursue the creatures in order to catch one of them, they fought back, and 3 of the Russian divers purportedly died as a result, with 4 others seriously injured, after they were propelled from the depths by a powerful, mysterious force, causing massive decompression injuries. These would not be the only alleged giant underwater humanoids to be spotted in Russian lakes, and they were supposedly reported from all over remote waters at the time. Indeed, that very same year, there was a training exercise of reconnaissance divers going on at Issyk-Kul Lake, a frigid, deepwater lake in the Transilya-Skalatau area. This mission was supposedly actually warned about what had happened at Baikal by a Major General V. Dymaenko, commander of the Military Diver Service of the Engineer Forces of the Ministry of Defense, USSR. Such stories were further fueled by an account from B. Borovikov, who came across such enormous underwater humanoids while diving in the Black Sea to hunt sharks in 1996. He claimed that as he was diving at a depth of around 8 meters in the Anapa area, he was terrified to see a group of massive humanoid creatures around 3 meters in length ascending from below. They were described as being milky white in color, with human-like faces but tails like fish. The entity in front reportedly saw Borovikov and stopped to stare with bulging, frog-like eyes, and another passed while waving with a webbed hand. The whole group approached until they were unsettlingly close, before suddenly darting off into the murk. Whatever these cases are describing, these accounts and more have been covered in some depth in a book by ufologists Paul Stonehill and Philip Mantle, called Russia's USO Secrets, Unidentified Submersible Objects in Russian and International Waters. What are we to make of such accounts as we have looked at here? Is there anything to all of this, or is it just military lore and stories? We may never know for sure.